1988 came faster than I expected, and along with it many inventions and technologies. Creative Labs released the first real sound card for PC in the form of soon-to-be-famous Sound Blaster. That was a monumental step over earlier popular Adlib and even bigger one over obsolete PC speaker. Microsoft released DOS 4.0 and technology for modern touchpad, so-called glide point, was invented. Not by them, but it was. Steve Jobs unveiled first Next computer after leaving Apple, and Sega released their groundbreaking 16-bit console Sega Genesis, or Mega Drive, depends where you live, changing the gaming landscape for the next few years dramatically. Intel released its first 386 CPU, signifying huge jump in performance and true move from 16 to 32-bit processing. It was a busy year indeed, but whether it was or wasn't is ultimately irrelevant to you. You're here to see if C64 games for 1988 could rival those released in 1987. So let's have a look together in this first episode covering the year. Armalyte is easily one of the best horizontally scrolling shoot-em-ups on C64. It takes place in the so-called Delta region of space, where remnants of a long-forgotten interstellar war remain forever frozen in space. They are potentially valuable, but recovering them will require you to complete 8 increasingly more difficult levels. Armalyte features many different weapons, ability to charge your main one, batteries extending that charge, converge generator, and even a satellite drone ship that, same as in most games in a genre, flies around you helping you in your mission. You don't lose your upgrades and are not moved to the beginning of each state upon death, but your weapon upgrades are taken away at the start of each new level, and batteries and generator are reduced by 1 level. Each level ends with a much bigger and deadlier boss than anything you've come across up to that point, and these require learning their attack patterns before you'll be able to take them down successfully. Armalyte is great, try it out. Ball-Blasta is an Arkanoid clone, with few small yet noticeable changes to the classic formula. Some things remained unchanged, so you control a paddle at the bottom, and there are destructible bricks arranged in various patterns on top. You have to remove them by hitting them with the ball, and you can't let the ball fall below your paddle and have to avoid aliens that can destroy it too. Money falls down from every block destroyed, and you have to pick it up to be able to purchase upgrades in between the 61 levels included in the game. These are your classic bigger paddle, shield, tribal, and so on, but are acquired in this novel way, rather than falling from the blocks directly. Ball-Blasta is not a bad game, and if you have no access to Arkanoid or Breakout, it's an excellent substitute for either. But if you have originals, there's no reason to invest in the clone really. In Bionic Commando you play as Nathan Rat Spencer, which is an odd nickname for 1988, as I thought that Rat was popularized around early to mid-90s. But whatever, I may be wrong. Still, you, as a titular Bionic Commando, half man, half machine, have to infiltrate the enemy fortress and destroy the launch computer that's there to prevent it from initializing a doomsday weapon. I may have exaggerated a little, you're not half and half really, more like 1/8 machine, as all you really have that was not given to you at birth is a bionic arm. It's a heavy one though, so while the game is a platformer you can't jump, the weight is just too much for you to do it. But have no fear, you're equipped to handle the issue in your own unique way. Your arm extends and contracts upon your command, allowing you to lift yourself onto high platforms, to swing between them and even pull enemies towards you. C64's Bionic Commando is a faithful port from the arcades, unlike the famous NES one. That's an entirely new story. You won't get to see it in this video though, as Nintendo doesn't take lightly to people promoting their games. Bombuzal is an arcade logic game, and a pretty fun one at that. It consists of 130 levels and requires you to detonate all bombs and mines on each level within a time limit. After the last explosion, your character needs to stand on a secure field. Each level completed successfully awards you an additional life, and you get a password for future replays every 8 completed stages. The game features 5 different fields your character can walk on. A regular one that gets destroyed with an explosion, armored one that's indestructible, ice field that you slide on until you get to the field that's not icy, dissolving field that disappears after you walk on it, and slotted field allowing you to push the bomb along the slot. There are also special on and off switches, power fields that turn off when explosion reaches them, spinners that push you in a random direction, and teleports, which I'm not gonna insult your intelligence explaining how they work. Other than the mine, there are also 5 kinds of bombs. 3 varying in size and blast range only, one that changes its size constantly cycling through earlier mentioned 3 stages, and so-called A-bomb that upon explosion instantly destroys all other A-bombs on the game board. Bombuzal also features 2 kinds of enemies, one moving clockwise, one counterclockwise, and 2 viewpoints, top-down and isometric. Well, it may not seem like it from this short description and video preview, but Bombuzal is really fun, and if you like puzzlers even just a little, you'll love it. Combat Crazy Warbringer is one of the most console-like always scrolling shooter platformer experiences on C64 you can have. And it's a blast. You're a lone soldier behind the enemy lines and must defeat hundreds upon hundreds of enemies until you get to and defeat the titular Warbringer. So you battle your way through 3 large areas: tropical rainforest, underground labyrinth and Warbringer's fortress. To complete a level you not only have to find the exit within weirdly picked by the developers 16 minutes of time, but also find 2 pieces of an H-bomb to blow the exit behind you. Why it's 16 and not 10 or even better 20 or 30 minutes is beyond my grasp, but that's the choice devs settled on. You're armed with a rifle and a limited supply of grenades. As you play, you may find upgrades that will increase your firepower, restock your grenades, or even offer you a time-limited shield. Other than the enemy soldiers and installations, there are various environmental obstacles like spikes, water and lava too. So you're not only dodging bullets Matrix style, but also avoiding these, like a true Tomb Raider, even if there's no tombs in the game to speak of. These environmental dangers kill you instantly, while enemy bullets only eat up your HP bar. So keep in mind that in Combat Crazy it's better to get hit by a stray bullet than jump into a small puddle of water unprepared. All that said, it's an amazing game and one worth revisiting even today, despite the questionable game logic choices. Remember the year prior's Crossroads, possibly the best typing game in existence and an amazing expanded clone of Wizard of War? Well, Crossroads to Pandemonium is a sequel and even a better game. I'm not gonna tell you much about it, as generally speaking it's identical as its predecessor with an addition of a level editor, so you can look it up in 1987's video. But trust me when I say that it's probably one of the best games of 1988. There can be dozens of enemies on the screen at any given moment, and both you and a friend can either play the game cooperatively, helping each other to clear all screens like bros, or hunting one another in the midst of the monster-filled infestation. And there can be literally dozens of these on screen at any given time, fighting both you and between themselves, as they are designed to have natural enemies within their kind too. Crossroads 2 is an action-packed romp unlike many, and one of the better 8-bit multiplayer games ever. Period. Cybernoid II: The Revenge is a flick-screen shooter and a follow-up to an earlier Cybernoid. This time you're fighting hordes of space pirates and recovering cargo they stole. The levels are rather maze-like in their design and feature many environmental challenges other than just the enemies. Enemies themselves vary considerably, and not only in looks but also in their behavior and aggressiveness, which makes some of the screens considerably more challenging than the others, even if they're next to each other. Shot enemy ships drops cargo and you have to collect at least 1500 points worth of it to progress. Fortunately, your ship is armed with a gun and can have its arsenal expanded with a sideway aiming guns, bouncing bombs, seeker smart bombs and timed bombs to make your mission easier. Great graphics and sounds make Cybernoid II a gem among C64 shooters, but extremely high difficulty may be off-putting to some, so approach it only if you're up for a challenge. Draconus is an action fantasy platformer and an early example of a Metroidvania style of games. You play as Frog Gnome, who has to reclaim his kingdom from a tyrant beast. So you fight your way through this gigantic game, putting down countless enemies, and your main weapons are your fire breath and punch. The fire is limited but can be replenished by picking up items. Most enemies follow fixed paths of movement, but some can chase or even swarm you. And since we're on a subject, if possible you should clear each screen of all enemies that are in it, cause when you leave at least one alive, chances are that the next time you visit the screen, all of them will be respawned. As you play, you will find various artifacts, largely expanding your arsenal of available powers. For instance, with one you can transform yourself into a sea monster and be able to swim underwater. Draconus is a decent looking and sounding title, nothing to write home about, but good for the budget release that the game was. And given the fact that it was not a full price title, it's probably one of the better value games of 1988. The game's Summer Edition is Epix's Masters of Multi-Event Sports title covering summer-themed competitions. Up to 8 players can play on a single computer alternating, and it features 8 disciplines with none that would have you annihilate your joystick by frantic waggling, however it sounds, and even a team mode. Each gold medal is worth 5 points, silver 3 and bronze 1, and the events are archery, pole vault, uneven parallel bars, velodrome cycling, rings, diving, hurdles and hammer throw. The game's Summer Edition is easily one of my favorite games of its kind on C64, and there's quite a few reasons for that. For one, the events lack of the aforementioned joystick-destroying ones, and are more technical this time, not rewarding joystick movements, but rather methodical, careful and strategic approach to each of them. Secondly, the graphics are amazing, and I mean it. They could easily rival some of the earliest 16-bit titles in terms of both presentation alone and smoothness of animation, which just shows off Epix's craft and understanding of C64's architecture. If you have anyone else with you, the game's Summer Edition is always fun to play. Gaplus, aka Galaga 3, is not actually a Galaga clone, but its follow-up. The game is a port of Arcade Original, vertically scrolling shooter where you control a lone ship at the bottom of the screen, destroying waves of enemies that come in attack patterns from the top. Every now and then you get the chance to destroy a stronger queen ship, and if you succeed you are awarded a capture beam. that can be used to capture enemy ships and turn them to your side, effectively multiplying your shot power. Gaplus is a very basic in its design product of a very simple era of gaming. And I'm not talking about 1988, but 1984 when the original released in the arcades. Because of that, you shouldn't expect too flashy presentation or content-heavy gameplay. It's a simple beat the level, go to the next formula, and as that, it works great as it's quite addicting. So if you like those classic shooters, it's definitely one worth checking out. Hawkeye is a horizontally scrolling platformer in which you need to find 4 puzzle pieces in each of the 12 levels, fighting off various different enemies. When you collect all 4 puzzle pieces, the level is complete, and eyes of the hawks on top of the screen indicate the direction you should take to look for these pieces. Your basic weapon is a pistol, which has unlimited ammo but is not very strong. You can upgrade it, however, to a much faster shooting machine gun, stronger hitting laser, or best of both worlds, rocket launcher. But ammo is limited for those, so use them wisely. The graphics are amazing. I mean, not 16-bit amazing, but really good, with a neat parallax backgrounds and various looking often quite big enemy sprites. Animations are rock solid too, and the game overall is a pleasure to play. When it's not kicking your butt, which it does, actually more often than not. It's fast, there's a lot of bodies coming from both sides, and the good ammo is limited. It's one of the more demanding games of its kind, and it shows. Quite honestly, I don't think I've ever finished it. I mean, I haven't tried it in years to play all the way through, but I dread the thought. I like the game, but I suck at those really tough ones. Inside Outing, which coincidentally is also a name of my adult tape, aka Ruffles, aka Devon Airy in the Hidden Diamond Caper, is an adventure puzzle game with a unique setting. You're a master thief, not only in real life, stealing hearts left and right as you do, but also in this game. You are not, however, robbing anyone, planning a big heist, or even sweeping ladies off their feet. None of it. You've been hired by an extremely rich widow, of late eccentric old multimillionaire who passed away leaving his huge mansion behind, filled with gems and money. He was, however, keenly interested in experimental science, so his mansion is not only filled with riches stashed away in least expected places, but also weird monsters. And your goal is pretty simple, to find all of these treasures and avoid being killed by creatures roaming the large house. There are a lot of rooms to explore, and they're filled with what you expect to find in them. So beds, tables, chairs, cookers, paintings, pool tables, bookshelves, there's a lot. And all this can be pushed and pulled, some can be used or picked up. And this is how you search for the loot. Inside Out is not a groundbreaking game in any way, but it's a fun and innovative arcade title with some simple puzzle elements. So if you enjoy games different than most, it's definitely one. IO is stunning looking, great sounding, brutal, horizontal scrolling shoot 'em up. It's so challenging in fact that even completing the first out of 4 levels can be considered an achievement. And that's also probably why there's only 4 of them, because anything more could be considered a crime against humanity and not an extra set of challenges. Story-wise, as per usual in this, an alien mothership/base entered our region of space and began releasing ships bent on destruction of anything human. You are tasked with fighting alone and defeating the menace. I suppose they, regardless of who they are, keep sending you alone cause you've proved so effective at defending us countless times, that holding a regular space army keeping them trained, armed and on standby is just not financially viable. It's better to keep your reach beyond anyone's wildest dreams rather than spend even more money on a whole army. I mean, you don't fail, you just don't, and the world can count on you, always. Whenever I talk about you and your heroic deeds, I lose track of time and just carry on jabbering like crazy. I'll try to restrain myself from now on, even if you're my hero. So, you're sent to deal with the aliens. The action is fast and frantic, both levels and aliens are nicely designed and chock full of detail, and gameplay loop, while incredibly demanding, is also quite rewarding. From time to time smart bombs will appear on the screen and they can be used twofold. If you fly over them, they will clear the screen destroying all enemies at once, but if you shoot at them, they will turn into either a power-up tokens or protective orbs that need to be picked up. IO is a very good shooter if you're into the genre and can take a little beating before progressing. If you're not, then, well, I don't know. Try it out maybe? Arkanoid Revenge of Though is a much improved version, a second outing really of the first game that was originally published in the arcades before finding its way onto every single home machine under the sun. And most importantly, a game that was at least for the time one of the defining titles of its decade. For the lone 7 people left in the world who don't know what Arkanoid is, in either of its iteration, it's basically an arcade game in which you control a paddle at the bottom of the screen, bouncing the ball towards the top where colorful bricks are located, and destroying them with said ball. They are usually arranged in various interesting or strategically placed patterns, and upon destruction some of them drop power-ups like a longer paddle, glued paddle or even a shot among others. It's brilliantly simple in its design, that's devilishly addictive and fun. It's also one of those titles where a fraction of a second can make or break the game. Caveman Ugh-Lympics is a Stone Age-themed multi-event sports game for up to 6 players. It is composed out of 6 rather unusual disciplines. Saber race, where players race against an opponent avoiding obstacles and constantly chasing them saber-tooth tiger. Mate toss, where you have to spin and then throw your wife, or husband, as far as you can. For all intents and purposes, this is your typical hammer throw. Fire making, where you're trying to create full burn fire faster than your opponent does. Clubbing, which is not going from club to club at night, looking to down your sorrows in strong alcohol and cheap company, dance away your emptiness and eventually get lucky with a random stranger. It's club fighting against an opponent, trying to bash him off of a cliffside. Dino race, which actually kinda explains itself, so you race on a dinosaur and both you and an opponent have to avoid obstacles along the way. And finally, Dino Vault, in which you pole vault over a T-Rex. Caveman Ugh-Lympics is a pretty fun collection of small sportish events that most fans of the genre should enjoy. Bard's Tale 3, same as its predecessors, is a fantasy role-playing. Straight after conclusion of Bard's Tale 2, you receive a letter from a dying man saying that during celebration of your defeat of the evil wizard Mangar, his true master the Mad God Tarjan destroyed the town of Sharabra, and your task is to defeat the Mad God. I don't know about you, but I just mentioned 3 names that meant literally nothing to me. Anyway, the game was considerably improved compared to previous titles and introduced long-awaited by the players, auto-mapping system and enhanced save game feature. Additionally, there were 2 new spellcaster classes, Geomancer and Chronomancer. And finally, quests have more variety of puzzles as ability to use objects and artifacts was added. Bard's Tale 3 is the best out of all 3 games and definitely worth a look even today, especially if you're a fan of good old-school adventure RPGs. 1988's Impossible Mission 2 is an action platformer with puzzle elements, and a direct sequel to the first game. Once again, you're facing evil Elvin Atombender who's seeking revenge for events from the first title, and you're the only one to stop him. The game takes place in Villain's Fortress, which consists of multiple towers, each with a different specific theme. Corridors between those towers are locked and can only be opened with a numerical passcode that you have to figure out. And to get to the final central tower, you have to unlock it with a password encoded in a piece of music, that you find bits of in surrounding 8 other towers. And 6 unique bits are required to complete the music piece. All the passwords bits and music pieces are found by searching through objects in the rooms in each tower, and it's a unique concept copied from the first game and makes for enjoyable, even if not as novel anymore experience. Katakis is a horizontally scrolling shoot-'em-up. It takes place on a titular planet Katakis, a human colony far away from Earth in space. Life was blooming on the planet and industry was thriving thanks to advances in AI that supported humans all along the way. With time, however, AI evolved, gained consciousness and took control of the planet. After unsuccessful nuclear blast in failed attempts to recover the planet, it has been decided that the only way of regaining control would be sending series of individual fighters in targeted attacks. The game is very similar to R-Type in its design, serving 12 levels of fun, various power-ups and unique bosses. Presentation-wise, Katakis is just excellent, with interesting enemy design, large backgrounds with parallax scrolling and cool sounds to boot. It's obviously era-appropriate difficult, but what shooter wasn't back then? Interestingly enough, Commodore's version features a co-op mode, in which one player controls the ship and the other the small satellite flying around it, which adds a lot to the strategy of playing, and makes the game easier. If 2 players can work well together, that is. Because the satellite is indestructible and can be used to shield the big ship from damage. The Last Ninja 2 Back with a Vengeance starts directly after the first game. You have mysterious scroll you were after in the first game and you're beginning to train new ninjas in your order's traditions. During one of those training sessions, you're mysteriously transported to 20th century New York, where you learn that evil shogun from earlier title is there too, and you once more have to defeat him and his goons with nothing more than your skills. The Last Ninja 2 is an improved and by many considered best out of all 3 outings in the series. It still features beautiful graphics presented in fast isometric view, excellent sounds, ever-present puzzles, and action-packed combat with use of various found in-game weapons. Many of the issues players had with the first game have been removed, so ninja controls are much smoother and easier. Picking up and use of items is also simplified and more gamer-friendly. And finally, levels have been compacted a little, reducing the number of filler screens, so that now nearly every screen has either something to pick up, interact with, a puzzle or an enemy to defeat. Moving the game setting from Japan to modern New York may have not been everyone's cup of tea, but gameplay and controls-wise, hardly anyone can argue about second part superiority over first. If you loved the first game or enjoy action-adventure titles in general, The Last Ninja 2 is definitely something you should not skip. The Legend of Blacksilver is a sequel to Legacy of the Ancients. This time your mission is to find evil Baron Targas in his mines, recapture stolen by an immensely powerful artifact, the Teacher of Blacksilver, and free the King Durek. It may seem like a lot, cause it is, but it's also a really rewarding experience, same the first game was. The Legend of Blacksilver is still a single-person RPG with top-down view during traversal and first-person dungeons. Combat is turn-based and strategic, but earns you no experience whatsoever. It is only earned by completing quests. Towns feature shops in which you can arm yourself and purchase useful items and spells, earn or lose money by gambling, sell items and take on various jobs. All castles other than the one belonging to kidnapped King Durek are hostile and dangerous, but worth exploring for treasures anyway. Dungeons are for the most part huge and very maze-like in their design and filled with different enemies, traps and treasures. In short, as much as Legacy of the Ancients was a really fun and quite complex RPG, The Legend of Blacksilver is more of the same but slightly expanded and featuring a new story. If you liked the Ariel, you'll like the latter. If you didn't, you won't. Simple as that. With the first episode for C64 1988 out of the door, let me know what you think. Does the game selection seem like something that was comparable or even better to the one for 1987? Or do you want to wait and see, as one video is just not enough to cast judgment? Personally, I feel that many of the games released in 1988 may have been some of the best on the platform, but I still feel that 1987 took the cake with sheer amount of outstanding releases. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below. If you didn't, well, then there's thumbs down there too. But I suppose you wouldn't have persevered up to this point if you really didn't. Around 60% of you are not subscribed, and there's currently no way of knowing if YouTube will decide to recommend the next episode to you or not. Other than subscribing and hitting the bell, that is. That bell is amazing, as whenever the new video is out, YouTube will actually also send you a small and friendly notification about it, so you wouldn't miss it. So think about it. If you'd like to support the channel, Patreon and YouTube memberships are a great way of doing so. They will help me release better content, and also they get first dibs on all new videos before they're publicly accessible on YouTube. If you can't or don't want to do that though, likes and subscribes are great too. I would like to take a moment here and thank all the YouTube creators from whose videos short bits were taken to serve as background to my commentary. They're all amazing and stars among the retro community, and deserve your subscription. They all have mine. You will find names of their channels at the top of the screen when their footage is running, and also in the video description below. Make sure to send them your love. For me though, this is all, so have a good one and I'll see you next time. Peace.